Welcome, Hoosier Nation, to the fifth week of the Big Ten Midweek Roundup show with the interns. I'm Michael. That's Josh on the other side. Josh, how are you today after that rough weekend of Indiana hoops?
I'm okay. I'm looking forward to tomorrow, though. Tomorrow's going to be a fun game with Iowa coming into Assembly Hall. Dickie V is going to be in the building. It's going to be exciting.
Absolutely. Dickie V, Reese Davis, and whenever Dickie V goes into the building to call a game during the week, and I feel like it's only during the week. On the weekends, the home team always pulls out a close one, but I feel like during the week, whenever he's on the call, it's always a big-time home win. And I just can't wait. It'll be a great environment. You and I will both be in the building. It's going to be unlike anything we've seen probably in our entire lives, college basketball-wise. With number 4, Iowa, are they 4 now coming in?
Yeah, number 4. 2 in Ken Palm, though.
Interesting. Okay, that's very interesting. So 2/4 Iowa, whichever way you want to look at that, probably at the 4, but whichever way you look at it, it's a huge game. And there's a lot to talk about, but let's stick to 3 main points that we think are going to sum them up well. And my first one is fairly obvious. Someone's got to establish the elephant in the room. I'll do it. It's contain Jared Uthoff. That should be the Hoosiers' first key to victory in this one. Iowa scores. That's not a secret. Everyone knows it. They can score a lot. They average a little over 80 a game, and Uthoff averages 19, I think, and change. So just under 20 of those 80 are credit to Jared Uthoff. So almost a quarter of their team points. And in losses, he has scored. This is where it's huge. In losses this year, which there's only 4 of them, Uthoff has scored 32, 20, 18, and 9. Now, for Indiana, if they want to win this game, they need to do everything they can to make sure that 9-point Jared Uthoff shows up and not 32-point Jared Uthoff shows up. Because if he walks into Assembly Hall and drops 32, there is, hear me out, no chance Indiana can win that game. 0 chance. I don't want to hear a word about how good their offense is, and they can make up for it. If Jared Uthoff scores 32-plus points, Indiana will 100% lose this game. So I'm not saying they need to hold him to 30 or even 31. And I'm not saying they need to contain him to just 9 to win the game, but they need to find somewhere in between because we know he's going to score. So to go out there and say we need to completely goose him out of the game, he needs to get a goose egg, donut, bagel, whatever you want to call it. 0 points for Uthoff is completely unrealistic. He's going to score. If Indiana can hold him below 18 points, they'll put themselves in a position to win this game. And I need to watch when I say that because I said if they contained that guy from Penn State last week, I think was it Jared Taylor? I can't remember his name. It's not relevant anymore.
Brandon Taylor.
Brandon Taylor. Thank you, Josh. If they contain Brandon Taylor, they'll win the game. Well, they didn't contain Brandon Taylor, and they lost the game. And I said even if they don't contain him, they'll still be in a position to win. Well, they weren't. They lost. They never really had a chance. And they never took a commanding lead. So they needed to contain Jared Uthoff or they're out of this game. Somewhere between 14 and 18 to 19 points for Uthoff would probably get the job done, enough for Indiana to be in this game. But Iowa's got another guy I'm going to talk about after Josh gives his point that can pick up the slack for Uthoff. Josh, what do you got?
Yeah, piggybacking on your point for a second, I think in one of those 30-point games that he had in their loss, I believe it was one of them was against Iowa State, and Iowa went rampant in the first half, was beating Iowa State by a bunch. In the second half, I think he was held scoreless or close to scoreless. So there's a little bit of a caveat there with that one, but 30 points is 30 points. My key in this one is give yourself a chance at the end. Hang around. It's going to be a closely contested game. You were saying both teams like to get up and down the floor. Both teams can put the ball in the basket, and if Indiana plays like they have at home in the past, that shouldn't be a problem because their scoring has been great. They've scored at least 74 points in all of their home games so far. And that 74-point game was against Minnesota, but they've been up in the 80s, 90s, and even in the hundreds at Assembly Hall. So they know that gym really well. Obviously, it's their home floor, but they need to be able to score the basketball because that's the only way you'll be able to beat this Iowa team is if you can match them bucket for bucket. And I think that's kind of what you have to do in this game. You cannot get behind early because you were saying with Uthoff and all of their bench, they got a great bench as well. You cannot let them get a big lead. You got to hang around in the game, maybe even get a good lead and make them come back in a hostile place to play. But you cannot get behind early. You have to give yourself a chance at the end to hit a big bucket, to hit some clutch free throws, but do not get down early and do not and just got to give yourself a chance at the end. That's what it comes down to.
Yeah, and in order to give themselves a chance at the end, like I said, they've got to contain Jared Uthoff. However, if they can succeed with that, the game's not over. The battle is not won. No mini battle is won because Iowa's got another guy by the name of Peter Jock, who is averaging over 19 points over his past 8 games, and he's shooting 50% from 3 over that 8-game span. He's a lights-out shooter, and he's also capable of putting the ball on the floor and drive to the hoop if need be. That's not his go-to, and he's not terribly strong with that, but he can do it if he has to, and he's proven he can succeed in that. In their loss to Notre Dame, Iowa, earlier in the year, when they lost to Notre Dame, whom Indiana beat, Peter Jock was 2 of 9 from 3, finished with 8 points, and Iowa shot 25% from beyond the arc as a team. So that is what Indiana needs to do. They need to contain Peter Jock as well, but by doing that, they need to focus on stopping the 3 ball. Because if they can stop Iowa from hitting these threes, they will force guys like Uthoff and Jock to get to the hoop, and where they can be successful, but not to the extent that they've been successful this whole year, because the whole thing about Iowa and scoring 80 points a game is their healthy balance of penetration, dribble drive, scoring from the paint, and these mid-range jumpers, and also the three-pointer. They find those threes in different ways than Indiana does. Like Indiana likes to take it in transition and look for a 3 when Iowa likes to move it around more like Michigan State almost, who we'll talk about next. And likes to kick out for a 3 if it's there. So Iowa really can score from any point, but the 3 ball is where they do most of their damage. And if Indiana even has the lead at one point, if it's 10, even 12 points, Iowa can get back into the game like that. Teams in the Big Ten get back into basketball games because of the three-pointer. Illinois, Iowa, Indiana, Northwestern, Maryland, Michigan State, all of these teams get back into ball games when they're down because of the three-pointer, whether it's hit 2, get the other person to call a timeout, and go from there, or hit a couple, get some stops, and then hit 1 more. It's what the Big Ten does, and what I've noticed throughout the years is when teams start to take leads and pull away, other teams knock down some consecutive threes, and what do you know? It's a one-possession game again. So Indiana needs to hold their guard down for the full 40 minutes. Unless it takes more, then keep going, because this may be an overtime game. But they need to eliminate the 3, starting with Peter Jock, and then make it be a little trickle effect down from there, because that guy can shoot the lights out, and he is white hot over the past 8 games. Stop the 3 by stopping Peter Jock, stop Jared Uthoff, and keep scoring. And they should be in a position in the final 4 minutes, the last media timeout, to take a lead in this game and hold it. However, like I said, nothing's given in the Big Ten. I've said it every week. I'll probably say it every week from here on out. You have to stay focused for 40 minutes. They weren't last week against Penn State. They lost. That's what can happen.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point there. And it actually kind of ties into one of our Twitter questions from @Sony42. Question for tonight: how does IU match up with Jock Uthoff in man defense, or will we see more zone? And I think that's a very good question, because this could be a game where Indiana kind of switches up their defense a little bit. You were talking about Iowa's ability to shoot the 3-point ball, and if IU is in a zone and Iowa's hitting their 3-point shots, I mean, that's the way that you beat a zone. So that means they'll probably have to go back to a man defense. But if their shot isn't falling, maybe we'll see more zone in this game if somebody gets in foul trouble, or if you just can't keep up with Uthoff or Peter Jock. This is a game where Indiana and Tom Crean can really mix and match defenses with who's on the floor, how the game is going. I think it's going to be kind of a flow to see how the game is going, how Iowa's playing, how Indiana's playing, what the foul situation is, where you are in the game. It's going to be a possession by possession thing in my mind about what defense Indiana plays, because you can attack this Iowa offense in so many different ways from the defensive side of the floor.
Yeah, I think so too, and I'm going to keep this one short because I think we're both going to cover this in our picks to click after the Michigan State preview, but I personally would like to see a lot of man-to-man, and I'll explain why, but I wouldn't be surprised if we saw zone. But, like you said, Indiana's been absolutely roasted this year by the 3-ball when they went to zone defense. Like in the Duke game, they played zone defense for 10 minutes longer than they should have, and Brandon Ingram and Grayson Allen were just knocking down threes left and right. It was an unbelievable performance by Duke. Got to give it to them. But at the same time, zone defenses, they're very reluctant and vulnerable when they play zone. So I personally would like to see a lot of man, and I'll cover that in my pick to click, and I assume you will too, just based off who I think you're going to pick for that one. But for now, let's move on to Michigan State, and we'll pick this up later. Great question, Brian Tonsoni on Twitter. Great question, and we're going to continue this in about 5 to 7 minutes.
Yeah, so on Sunday, Indiana runs the gauntlet this weekend with Iowa and then Michigan State, and that's going to be in East Lansing on Sunday. And my first key to this game is you have to take the crowd out of it early. This is one of the most hostile places to play in the Big Ten. The student section is right on you, is right behind the bench. It surrounds that lower bowl that you see, and it is a hostile place to play. And if you fall behind early, you have no shot. I think Indiana fell behind there early a couple years ago, and it was just a lost cause at that point, because that is just a tough place to play. And with those Michigan State teams, they just keep on rolling. They don't stop. Tom Izzo is one of those coaches that'll just keep the gas pedal on whoever the opponent is, especially at the Breslin Center. And if you fall behind early, it's not going to go well. And my last point kind of ties into that. History tends to repeat itself, and Indiana has not had too much success up in East Lansing against Michigan State. And if you fall behind early, it's not going to go well. So stay in the game, and I'll talk about my last point after Michael lets us know what his is.
Yeah, and nor does Indiana play well on the road this year. We haven't really seen a convincing performance against a good opponent on the road, or even an average opponent on the road. But the way you're going to win games on the road as the potential underdog is force turnovers. And Michigan State is a team that is almost flawless, except what happens to them is they turn the ball over quite a lot, and they can get sloppy, whether it's travels, offensive fouls, whatever. They turn it over a lot, and they don't get a lot of takeaways. So their turnover to takeaway ratio is not as good as it could be. They move the ball better than anyone in the entire country. Forget the Big Ten. Anyone in the entire country. I think they have more team assists than anyone. They rebound very well. They've got a lot of scoring options. They hit the three ball very well. But the main thing that Indiana can control, because they can't control any of that other stuff. They can to an extent, which really in Big Ten basketball, that means you can't control it. But the thing they can control is the turnovers. And they need to force turnovers from Michigan State. That's how you win conference games on the road as the underdog, is you force turnovers. If you can't force turnovers, the game's over. I don't care how good you are. If the other team's taking care of the ball and you're being sloppy with it, it's over. Michigan State is 100th in the country. 100th in the country in turnovers, with over 12 a game. And they're only averaging 13 a game, just over 13 a game in losses. So they're consistently turning the ball over. So it's not like it takes a great, flip of events or flip of, whatever you want to call it, for Michigan State to turn the ball over. They average 13 in losses and 12 per game throughout the whole season. So, it balances out. It's 100th in the country, but that's their only kryptonite, really. Like I said, they pass better than everyone. So if Indiana can get in front of these passes and force a couple turnovers, get a couple breakaway, some free points right there, that's what it's going to take to win this game, because Michigan State's got the most versatile player in the country, and they can do almost everything super, super well, but they turn it over a lot. And if Indiana can't emphasize or cannot follow through on that and force turnovers and get that ball back, this is going to be a rough one. That's all. I mean, it could get ugly.
Yeah, and just like Michigan State turns over a lot, I mean, Indiana on the road also does turn it over a lot, so we'll see how that goes. But my last key for this game against Michigan State is do not let Denzel Valentine score too much. He will get his 18 to 20 points because he is just a great player and can shoot the ball and make it on most possessions. But you can only hope to contain this guy, because he's going to get his 18 to 20 points. He's going to get his 5 to 10 rebounds, and he'll probably dish out around 5 assists. I mean, this guy is the full package. He's kind of like Ben Simmons, where he can get a triple-double on any night he steps on the floor. And against Indiana, you have to contain him. I don't know whether that's playing zone against him or whether that's manning him up pretty good. You're going to have to find a good matchup there on defense, because if you don't, he will torch you, and that cannot happen for Indiana to have success. And kind of tying back to my first point, if he's hot, I don't think things are going to be going that well for Indiana. So if he has 10 points in the first 10 minutes, I don't know if that's going to be a good recipe for Indiana, especially trying to stay in this game until the very end and not getting behind early.
Yeah, all great points there. And that game for Michigan State, to me, Josh, tell me if you disagree, is scarier, much scarier than this upcoming Iowa game, just in a little over 24 hours. Do you by chance have those KenPom numbers on you and what he says is going to happen in these two games?
Yes, I do. So right now, Iowa is. Here, wait. Actually, let me pull it up. Okay, Iowa, 44% chance of winning. He has Iowa winning 77-75. And on Sunday, he gives Indiana just a 20% chance to win with the score 79-71. So Ken Palm not really liking the Hoosiers at all this week, but that game on tomorrow's should be pretty close to a toss-up there.
I think it's very winnable, and overtime wouldn't surprise me. But how are they going to avoid overtime? How about this transition? By getting those X factors to perform well. Now, Josh, who is your pick-to-click X factor for that game tomorrow night?
My pick-to-click is Robert Johnson. He is going to have a big night tomorrow night on the defensive side of the floor and on the offensive side of the floor because this guy is ready to break out. I think he's finally ready to do it, have a big game for the Hoosiers, and they're going to need him because they're going to need all hands on deck to win this game tomorrow night, even though it's at home. And on the defensive side of the floor, he's going to have a pretty good matchup there. It'll most likely be with Peter Jacques, and that'll be a really tough matchup for him. But I think he's up to the task and kind of playing off of Jared Utoff where OG Anunoby, Colin Hartman could be playing on him, maybe even Troy Williams. I'm not sure who Karina wants to match up with him. There's that other matchup there with Johnson and Jacques, and I think Johnson is going to have a big night. He's going to be up to the task, and hopefully he can key Indiana to a win tomorrow night.
Yeah, and you want to talk about big games. Is there a better tee-up for a big game than this one for one Troy Williams? I mean, this guy came into the season with expectations in Bloomington and throughout the country to be a superstar. Not a leader, a superstar. An NBA draft caliber pick. He's not looking anything like that right now. He's been ice cold in the last couple games. 9 points against Michigan and Penn State. He had 4 fouls against Michigan, and he had 9 points in 14 minutes with 4 rebounds. Penn State, 2 fouls, 9 points in 20 minutes. Averaging 17 minutes in those 2 games. That's pitiful. Ever since that Illinois game where he was 8 of 11 from the field and had 21 points, he's nowhere to be found. Northwestern, he played all right, 9.7 boards. Wisconsin, Minnesota, he had 15 and 13. And then those aforementioned 2 games against Michigan and Penn State, he was terrible. I mean, the Troy Williams we saw against, IPFW where he had 19 rebounds and got to the line for 11 free throws, and the Troy Williams we saw against Notre Dame who had 18 and 10, it has completely vanished from the face of the earth. Where is he? And if I'm Troy Williams, I'm sitting back at that film room, and I'm sick and tired of hearing how good the Hawkeyes are and hearing that Jared Utoff is the Big Ten's best player and he could win Big Ten Player of the Year and he's the conference's leading scorer. I don't want to hear any of that. I'm Troy Williams, I don't want to hear that. I'm going to go out here. I'm going to drop 25 on this guy. I'm going to hold him to 12. I'm going to get a double-double. And I'm going to give a Hoosier victory. I'm going to be the MVP of the game, and I'm going to lead this team into a great second half of the Big Ten season, win the Big Ten in the regular season, go as far as we can in the Big Ten tournament, set ourselves up well for March, and we'll go from there. We'll see where that takes us. But it all starts tomorrow night because that is a game that Troy Williams is due for in terms of a big one, and that is one that he can have, and it's something that's going to bring out everything that he's got. He's got to put it all on the floor and leave it there because this is a huge matchup, and he is absolutely destined to break out in this one against Jared Utoff and company. I can't wait. I hope he does it. It seems like destiny almost. It's just almost too good to be true, but let's hope that's an almost too good to be true. Let's hope it does come true, but that's what I think will happen from Troy Williams. That's what I hope will happen from Troy Williams. Breakout game, and he starts to go just go crazy for the rest of the year.
Yeah, I mean, back in October for Hoosier Hysteria, he won the dunk contest and the three-point contest, and everybody was like, oh, this is going to be the season of Troy Williams. He's going to break out. He's going to be a big NBA star. But we really haven't seen that, so hopefully he can get that together tomorrow. But my pick to click for Sunday, it's got to be Yogi Ferrell. You're on the road in a hostile place to play, and you need your leader, your senior leader, one of your best scorers, your distributor. You need him to have a big game, and that's, I think, the only way Indiana gets out of there with a win against a top 10 team in Michigan State. Yogi Ferrell's got to be the vocal leader on the floor. I don't think we've seen him be the leader in the stat book and on the floor, but I don't know if we've seen like that vocal leader of Yogi Ferrell quite yet. I feel like there's still a lot more in the tank for Yogi Ferrell coming down to his last few weeks here in Bloomington, and I think this can be a great mark to set yourself up for the rest of the season. Get a big marquee win behind Yogi Ferrell, and if he goes for a 30-point performance like he did against Wisconsin, hopefully things are different than that game. But Yogi Ferrell is poised for a big game, and you're going to need it from your leader in a hostile place to play on Sunday.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And my guy for this game is the man I've been all over all year in every good way possible, Robert Johnson. I think that he's been sensational since James Jackman Jr. went out. He came into the starting role and showed no jitters right away. I mean, he was good to go from that first game back against, I believe it was Wisconsin actually. And he's been playing very good defense on ball, that stuff that doesn't really show up on the stat sheet. He's getting 1 to 2 steals a game, which is nice, not outstanding, but nice. But he's doing the things that don't show up on the stat sheet. He's the vocal leader of that defense. He's usually sticking the first or second leading scorer on the opposite team, and that's sensational from just being on the bench 2 months ago, a month and a half ago even. And he's been kind of the Luol Deng to me of this team back when Luol Deng was on the Bulls and they were going to the Eastern Conference Finals. You know, the guy that'll give you some solid minutes and match the other team's best guy, but not really get all the praise for it because he can't score as well as everyone else, and he's not as athletic as everyone else. But he passes the ball very well. He's got great vision offensively. He can knock down an open jumper just as well as almost anyone, with the exception to Yogi on this team. And he plays the best on-ball defense that this team has. There's no doubt about that. So, if Indiana wants to win this game, whoever he's guarding, and it won't be Denzel, so probably won't be Denzel, I should say, because who knows if Troy Williams or whoever just gets completely manhandled in that one. They may switch it up, but it probably won't be Denzel. So whoever he's guarding, he needs to stick them because Denzel's not their whole team in Michigan State. They've got other guys that can score well. So Robert Johnson's got to eliminate as best he can his matchup, and Indiana will have a chance to score and get back in this game because I don't really think that they'll be ahead at any point outside of the first maybe 4 minutes, and I don't even think that. So Robert Johnson, who is, to me, their best on-ball defender, needs to lead by example this game or it's over.
Yeah, and hopefully that can start with tomorrow against Iowa and Peter Jacques. Hopefully he can kind of gain some momentum tomorrow and carry that into Sunday. And I think we have a Twitter question, Michael.
We do. From @DenverHelton, he asks, how can OG pick up from his disappointing performance versus Penn State? This is a guy that it's a great question, Denver. Thanks for tweeting in. This is a guy that we've been all over all season. And that head-scratching loss that IU seems to give you every year happened this weekend. And OG's 0 of 1 from the field, goose egg. What the heck? What's up with that? Now, I just didn't really see the same OG to me. Watching that game, I'm like, where's OG? Like, oh, wait, he's on the floor. He's just not doing anything, And, how is this for a hot take? This is kind of branching off topic, but sticking to this game. Someone I was talking to after that one said that Penn State gets those wins every year. Those, weird head-scratching wins at home. And you're like, how did they win that game? And I don't know if he believes this or not, but it's an interesting way to look at it. He thinks that environment is just so dull and boring and dead that it almost motivates you to play slower. And that is Indiana's kryptonite, is playing slow. And I'm thinking about that. I'm like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever – wait, no, that actually could – you could convince me that makes sense. So I don't know. That's what I saw from Indiana. So that kind of adds up. Whether that's a true statement or not, Indiana was dead that whole game. There was no fire in anyone's feet. They didn't look like they wanted to be there, and whether or not that was from the dead silent crowd or empty house, whatever it may be, it was a complete culture shock from Assembly Hall, I'll tell you that much. But Indiana did not look like they wanted to play, and OG especially, and that's what's been separating him from the rest of the pack this whole season, is that he's wanted to play, and he's had more energy than everyone on the floor at almost all times. That's what I saw from him. That this past weekend against Penn State is that energy was gone. And, when that energy's gone and that one thing that separates him from the pack is gone, he's just a freshman with raw talent. And that showed. That's what I saw. Did you see the same thing, Josh?
Yeah, there was a Twitter question I think came in midweek or last week, and it was, does Thomas Bryant have freshman moments? And I think yes, he does. But on OG Anunoby, I think this was just a freshman moment. He had been playing so well up until Saturday that, he's a freshman. You got to give him some slack, at least a little bit, even though we've been seeing him play as as such a great defender. He gets steals and breakaway dunks and all that. He can score 11 points for you when you need it. But I think it was no more than just a freshman moment. I think he'll rebound fine, and it's just kind of just one of those things. But I just saw this on Twitter. Yogi Ferrell was just named to the Wooden Award late season top 20. So of all those awards that come at the end of the season, that's a pretty big one, and that's pretty cool to see for Yogi to make that top 20 list.
Yeah, he absolutely deserves that. Congratulations to Yogi, and just keep doing what you're doing, because without him, this team is not where they are right now. But back to OG, we got to see that fire from him. You agree with me? And it starts tomorrow, right? It's got to start tomorrow. He's got to come off the bench with fire again.
Oh yeah, I mean he's going to be one of those sparks off the bench that Indiana has to have, especially going up against Jared Uthoff. He'll probably be guarding Jared Uthoff when he's in the game. And like you were saying, if Uthoff goes off for 30 points, there's probably no way Indiana has a chance. And OG Anunoby is probably a big key in that. So we've got to see that fire off the bench. We've got to see him bring some energy to the floor. And that's not just OG Anunoby, that's the whole bench. I mean, just those starting five is not going to take you all the way to beating Iowa. You need a full team effort, and I think OG Anunoby is a big part of that off the bench.
Yeah, and I talked about in my pick to click that Troy Williams is due for a breakout game to get back to what he's capable of doing. Now, while OG had that trajectory, he was going like this, very steady throughout since the beginning of Big Ten play. Excuse me, I can't speak tonight. That trajectory kind of took a big time drop on Saturday evening, and this is a game where he's back on his home floor off 4 days of rest. He can really come out and explode. And by explode, I mean, guard Jared Uthoff very well, hit the boards for maybe 6 rebounds, and have, 12 points, 12 to 14 points. That's an explosion for OG Anunoby at this point, because he's not going to give you 30 minutes a game, not with Troy Williams ahead of him. I mean, with the way Troy Williams is playing right now, who knows? But like I said, he's going to break out on tomorrow night, and we won't have to worry about that. But when OG comes in, if we can get Troy Williams to have that breakout game and OG to get back to what he was doing and have a great game too, I like Indiana's chances. I'd almost pick them straight up. And in fact, let's get to that right now. Let's pick these games straight up. Forget the spread. Forget everything else. Forget KenPom. Straight up, Iowa, Indiana. Josh, I have Indiana. I have Indiana 77-73 at home. 4-point victory, upset, no court storming in Bloomington. Not tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Just a big time win against the team that Indiana knows that they're better than. Because Jared Uthoff is great and all, but Troy Williams is going to come in and say, "Nuh-uh. He's just Jared Uthoff. I'm Troy Williams." He's going to be the Troy Williams we know and love and we've wanted to see all season. Indiana 77, Iowa 73. What about you?
Okay, I mean, I've been going back and forth with this game just in my head all week. After that Penn State game, I was like, okay, something's got to change. It's going to be Thursday against Iowa. And then I wrote my preview for my website last night, and I picked Iowa 78-77. And I was just thinking about that again today. I was like, do I really want to go with that? Indiana at home. It's going to be a big time atmosphere. And I think I've changed my mind, and I think I'm going to pick the Hoosiers tomorrow night. Assembly Hall is just one of those places, especially. I mean, I haven't been there when it's been a big time game like Iowa, top 5 opponent coming in. So this is going to be an incredible experience for everybody there. The students are going to be rowdy. Dick Vitale's in the building. You gotta love it, baby. And I think the Hoosiers are going to squeak out a win. It's going to be a 1 to 2 point game somewhere in the 70s. It's going to be a close game. It's going to be a fun game. But I do think the Hoosiers are going to get back on track tomorrow night.
So a unanimous Hoosier pick over Iowa. That's stunning. I'm sure Jared is loving this right now. But just one quick little thing. I'm a firm believer in superstition and storylines and whatnot when it comes to sports and anything else in life. And just a quick anecdote where I'm just going to leave it at the end. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to relay facts. Last week, I believe it was 7 days ago today, I was in Assembly Hall for an Indiana women's game between the Hoosiers and the Hawkeyes basketball. Indiana women's team was undefeated on their home floor going into that game. They were down by double digits the entire time, and they stormed back with 5 minutes to go and took the lead, went back and forth for the final 2 minutes, and ended up winning that game. So that team was undefeated going into a matchup against a better Iowa team, snuck out a hard-fought win and remain undefeated at home. Tomorrow night, 8 days later, an undefeated Indiana team at home faces a better Iowa team on their home court on Assembly Hall. I'm going to leave it at that. Storylines are big in sports. That's all I got to say.
No, that's definitely right there. But I was on Twitter today, like I usually am, and some of the players met the media today, and Max Bielfeldt was asked about that loss against Penn State, and he said, "I lost to Penn State when I was at Michigan, and we went on to the Final Four that season." So I'm just going to leave that there as well.
I'm not going to say anything regarding that. I don't want to jinx it. I don't want you to jinx it. If anyone watching this wants to go ahead and make a comment, go right ahead. But we're going to remain silent and move on for our predictions against Michigan State, and then wrap up with our upset picks. Josh, this one is tougher to me, this Michigan State game. And I'm not going to beat around the bush or sugarcoat it at all. They're not going to win this game, I don't think. I just find it nearly impossible for this team to come off, if they beat Iowa, to come off that win. For a 9 o'clock tip-off, the game will wrap up probably after 11. And whatever happens after the game, it's going to be a late night for the Indiana, whatever happens, win or lose. And then they have to turn around and play Michigan State Sunday at 1 in the afternoon. And that's a quick turnaround, especially coming off a hard-fought game against Iowa, regardless of the outcome. And then they got to go into the Breslin Center and face Denzel and Izzo and the Spartans. I just don't think there's any way they win that game unless they get completely embarrassed tomorrow, which will not happen. I'm so certain of that. But I just don't see that. I just don't see a way where they can win this game unless that this Iowa game proves to be a stepping stone and everyone plays like they're capable of, which that could result in a double-digit victory. But I just haven't seen anything that's going to make me believe that. And they've had some teases at some points this year that think, okay, we're going to turn it around now, and then they come and they make you scratch your head with a loss to Penn State. But I do think they win tomorrow night. I truly believe that, but I don't see them beating Michigan State. I think that's a 10-point win for Sparty. I mean, I hate to say it, but I just think that's the case.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you on that one. I don't see Indiana going up there and beating Michigan State, especially in East Lansing. If the game was here, obviously we'd both probably reconsider, but it being up there is just not it just doesn't bode well for the Hoosiers, especially with that short turnaround. And but one thing, if there's anything to hang your hat on for that game, it's that is that Denzel Valentine is prone to shooting bad shots. So maybe they can hang their hat on that, get something out of him. That's not what Michigan State wants, but it's not looking good on Sunday. It's going to be a CBS game, so I mean it's a lot of people are going to be watching, but I don't know how good their chances are going up to East Lansing and getting a win.
And we all know how great Sunday mornings are in Columbus on CBS, but things are different when they go to East Lansing. So don't expect any upsets there. But then again, this is Indiana. They're very good, and we'll see what happens, and we can reevaluate by ourselves because we won't meet with you until after that game. What happens after the Iowa game and think about what could possibly happen Sunday. But at this point right now, I just don't see it. How about an upset pick, Josh? I'll take the lead with this one because I do have something to say, and I think most of you think you know where this is going. And, it's fitting for me to sit here right now at 7:05 on a Wednesday, 2-3 weeks after the fact, and my suspension has been lifted. And as everyone should now know, Northwestern travels to West Lafayette to play Purdue next Tuesday evening. So it's only fitting for me to pick them, right? Well, wrong. And I'm not picking them. I don't know if they're going to win. I don't think they will. They haven't looked great. Purdue's looking pretty good. Like I said, they beat Michigan State last night, and they did. But I'm not picking Northwestern over Purdue. I know. I'm as shocked as everyone, and prepare to be even more shocked because my pick to win is happening in an hour and 56 minutes where the Minnesota Golden Gophers will get their first conference win against Michigan at the Barn in just 2 hours tip-off. Karis LeVert is a game-time decision, 50-50 coin flip. We don't know if he's going to play. I don't care if he's going to play. They're going to lose either way. Minnesota, upset, first Big Ten win, and then they've got that showdown against Rutgers in the next week, I believe, the battle of the basement in the Big Ten. Rutgers continues, as I predicted, their winless streak in the Big Ten. I think they'll go the entire year without a conference win. Minnesota gets that one of 2 wins tonight against Michigan on their home floor. They go in and beat Rutgers, and they wrap up the season with 2 wins. I got Minnesota in a shocker, mostly because of the lack of good potential for upsets, but also because I love a good storyline, and the Gophers are going to do it.
I mean, I picked Minnesota last week against Northwestern, and that really did not go well as a 20-plus point difference there. But, I mean, you were talking about Rutgers and how they're going to go the entire season without a win. I cannot believe I'm going to do this because I don't have too much faith in this game. But Ohio State visits the RAC on Saturday afternoon, and I think Rutgers is going to pull off the massive upset. I cannot believe I'm doing this. I'm going to sound like the stupidest guy when they lose by 30 at home again. But I think I'm going to go with the Scarlet Knights. Corey Sanders is a big-time player. He is one of the biggest bright spots on just an abysmal team. But I do think that Rutgers is up to the task, and they will get a win on Saturday against the Buckeyes.
Rutgers is just – they're so terrible to me, and teams that are this bad – only really have one chance a season to get that win that no one thinks they'll get, like a conference win for Rutgers. And that chance was against Illinois. And they lost 110 to 101 in triple overtime, I believe, which that's a good fight. But then you look at the games before and after that. The game following, they lost to Nebraska by 24. The game before that, they lost by over 35 to Michigan State. Game before that, they traveled on the road to Michigan and played well, lost by 11. 14 against Iowa. And then before that, they lost to Purdue by 50 points. I mean, Corey Sanders, first of all, big-time player. I don't know if that's just to have some fun with this upset pick or not, but
big-time player. Talking about Rutgers.
Okay, a big-time Rutgers player. That's very fair. That's fair. I'll give you that. That's fair. He's averaging 16 a game, which is not bad for any team, really. And we're not trying to knock on Corey Sanders or anything, but I mean, this team is just, they're putrid, awful. Pick any adjective that's a synonym for those words, and that fits what Rutgers is. They can't score, and their defense is as porous as a dish sponge. I mean, they really can't do anything right. They can't hit the boards. I'm stunned. I'm truly stunned those words came out of your mouth. But hey, you know what? If we get both of these upsets right, we may have to do something special next week. I don't know what we're going to do, but if both of these go our way, we've got to do something, and we'll talk about that and announce it on Twitter if that were to happen. But, man, oh, man, am I rooting for both Rutgers and Minnesota now harder than I ever will for the remainder of my time on this planet. But even if we get one of these upsets, I'll be content. But, we'll see. If we get both of those right, something big is happening on next week's edition. I don't know what it is, but something big will happen.
Yeah, and then it all just sets up Rutgers versus Minnesota twice the rest of the season, so that'll be exciting. But I mean, I'm either gonna sound like the smartest guy in the world, or I'm just gonna be some stupid guy talking on the internet about Rutgers pulling some stupid upset. But
I mean, crazier things have happened.
It is the Big Ten. That's what we say every week. It is the Big Ten. Anything can happen, and it is a road game for Ohio State. So I don't know. We'll see.
And Ohio State had their way with struggling Northwestern last night at home, and it's probably because that wasn't a Sunday morning. But yeah, I mean, crazier things have been done. Indiana just lost to Penn State, so who's to say Rutgers can't win at home? We'll see. Mark your calendars for that one. Those should be 2 really, really poor displays of Big Ten basketball, but we'll see. We're rooting for 2 upsets there, which I think, would that be our first time all year getting both upset picks correct? I know last week I had Purdue over Michigan State. Who did you have? I'm blanking on that. Oh, you had Minnesota, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had Minnesota, and that did not go well whatsoever.
Yeah, that didn't go well. That's what happens when you bet with Minnesota, I guess, which kind of scares me because that's exactly what I just did. But
it was true.
Hey, if there's any week for us to get both these picks correct, because we've alternated. I think there are weeks where I've gotten it wrong, you've gotten it right, and vice versa, which is crazy. But hopefully this is the week where it lines up, and it'd be a great week to do it. Because of the storylines for both just awful teams. I
got one thing.
You got one more thing?
At Sony42 on Twitter, if you guys both pick the upsets correctly, Assembly Call will buy us dinner at Little Zagreb's down in downtown Bloomington.
Wow.
So that would be exciting.
Wow. Okay.
On the house.
Obviously, we can't make that decision, but we're gonna run that we may talk about that by ourselves. But if both those happen, whoever tweeted that, I don't know who you are, but we'll find you and we'll get in communication with you. And if Jared won't do it, Josh and I will talk about doing it because that would be something else. Maybe even you should buy us dinner if we get both of those correct. Maybe it should be on you to us, but that now we're just dreaming. So we'll fight that battle when the time comes. But until then, Indiana's got, in all seriousness, Indiana's got two very big games coming up that can very well change the trajectory of this season. And it all starts tomorrow night in just over 24 hours. Dickie V in the house, Reese Davis. Crazy stuff happens when Dickie V's on the call, and especially when big-time teams come into Assembly Hall. That was a great rhyme. I didn't even mean to do, but we'll see what happens. Iowa coming in, who knows? Maybe they'll come out with a loss. I'm hoping for it. I think it will happen. I truly do. This team matches up well with the Hawkeyes. Troy Williams is going to come out again. We're going to see what we've wanted from him all year, and 77-73 Hoosiers. I'm sticking to it.
I mean, Dickie V in the building. I mean, that's all you have to say right there. I mean, that's just exciting in itself. But I was watching his game. He was at Kansas on Tuesday. He's at Assembly Hall on Thursday, and he's at I think Cameron Indoor on Saturday. I mean, and he was like, "I get paid to do this. I mean, that's incredible, baby." But I mean, gotta love to be Dickie V, and it should be an exciting game. And I think I saw something going around on Twitter. I don't know if this is just a rumor or not, but the Indiana-Purdue game is at 8:30 next Saturday, which is the primetime slot for ESPN. And I heard maybe that if Indiana can pull off the upset tomorrow night, that College Game Day will be at Assembly Hall next Saturday, and that would sure be something right there.
My, oh my. I didn't even think about that. We tried to get him here for football against Ohio State and actually made a nice effort, nice run at it. I didn't even think about getting him here for basketball. That would be nuts. I would love that. If that's a big-time game, obviously, with huge implications for both teams. I'd love to see that, but we got to worry about these next two games. If we can come out of here, if Indiana can come out of here 1-1 these next two games, fine by me, because no one's expecting them to win both these. No one's expecting them really to win any. Some people aren't expecting them, I should say, because some people are, but some people are not expecting them to win any of these two games. But I expect 1-1. I expect an Iowa win and Michigan State loss. For Indiana, I should say.
Yeah, 1-1 sounds very fair in these two games. Hopefully, they can avoid the 3-game losing streak with losing both these upcoming. But that would be worst case scenario. If they can get a win tomorrow, then they can. I mean, I wouldn't say cruise into Michigan State at all, but I mean they'll be feeling pretty good about themselves heading up there in a tough place to play, and hopefully they can pull off a win. But there's some big time games in the Big Ten coming up this weekend. We got Purdue at Michigan and Wisconsin at Maryland. That Wisconsin at Maryland game is pretty interesting because it took a Melo Trimble 3 at the buzzer for Maryland to knock off Wisconsin a couple of weeks ago in Madison, which should be an interesting game. And then Purdue heads up to Ann Arbor, where we could see the return of Karis LeVert. So two pretty good games coming up this weekend in the Big Ten.
Sorry, I had some trouble with my mic there trying to get it unmuted. But yeah, no, you said it right there. Michigan, Purdue. Karis LeVert coming back probably tonight in a loss against Minnesota, I'm telling you. And Trenton actually pointed out something earlier, Josh, where this does matter, and I need to correct myself. So thanks, Trenton, for pointing it out. After my Minnesota and Rutgers harsh comments, I apologize to both those schools and teams. But he says Minnesota plays Rutgers twice. So am I saying Minnesota gets 3 wins this year? Trenton? Yes. Yes, I am. Minnesota gets 3 wins this year, both against Rutgers, and Rutgers another goose egg in conference play. But Minnesota does get this win tonight, and I'm rooting for him. I can't wait to see it happen. Down goes Michigan yet again, which is music to all Hoosier fans' ears.
Yeah, so, I mean, big week ahead for the Hoosiers. Any final thoughts there, Michael?
No, not really. I mean, nothing that we haven't covered. Troy Williams has got to come out tomorrow, and then Ochi's got to fill in on the bench when he comes out. But without Troy Williams showing up tomorrow, it'll be an uphill battle for Indiana. I truly think that. I just don't know how much they could do if he can't contain Utah. Which, if someone throughout the season at this point can contain Utah, it's Troy Williams. I think he's probably the one going to be the top 2 defenders that Jared's seen all year. But I'm nervous for it. I think it'll be a great game. It won't be an ugly game. So if you have a ticket to that one, great. You'll be in for some great basketball nonetheless. But I think this matchup hinges on Troy Williams. If he plays poorly offensively and defensively, it's going to take a heroic performance from an unsung hero, maybe Bielfeldt, Thomas Bryant. Someone's going to have a career high if Indiana's going to win this game.
Yeah, I mean, and when we were talking about what defense they're going to play, I mean, that's really going to be interesting to see what happens there, what Tom Crean has dialed up, what the game plan is to take Jared Uthoff out of the game, and all of that. So, I mean, it's going to be an exciting game. Pardon my roommate in the background. There he is. No, but it's going to be a great game. 9:00 on ESPN, primetime slot. Reese Davis, Dick Vitale, Kaylee Hartung will be there on the call at Assembly Hall. It's going to be exciting. Make sure to tune in for the post-game show and the halftime report during the game. It'll probably be a late one tomorrow night with the 9:00 start, but it's going to be a fun one. And then we got Michigan State on Sunday. So two big games coming up here for the Hoosiers that could really define their season, depending on what happens. And then we'll probably be back next Tuesday because Indiana plays Nebraska at home on Wednesday. So until then, hopefully the Hoosiers can get a couple wins this week, and we will see you next week.